Hello, thank you for joining the Body Systemics channel. This channel is dedicated to analyzing the body language of videos from different backgrounds. Today, we're going to analyze a video extracted from the movie Mission Impossible Fallout, which was released in 2018. This film extract is striking. When we watch it, we're touched. What do we see on the different characters that makes us so touched? We're going to go through the video and stop on the different striking sequences. Then we'll analyze the body language by freeze-framing it, interpreting it according to the context and, when necessary, slowing it down so we can see the different configurations. I suggest you watch this 2-minute-19-second extract once, then we'll get straight to the analysis. Let's get started.
Arrêtez! Restez où vous êtes!
Kennecar.
Personne ne bouge! Montrez-moi vos mains!
Partez. S'il vous plaît.
Vous tous! Montrez-moi vos mains!
Ne faites pas ça, s'il vous plaît. Vous devriez partir. S'il vous plaît. Vous devriez partir.
Solo wants a word with you.
Qu'est-ce qu'on fait d'elle? Achève-la.
Ça va aller. Ça va aller.
Allez-y.
Je suis blessée par balle.
Votre position.
Mais trop assis, je suis blessée.
Trop passif, bien
Ça va
reçu.
aller.
We gotta go.
Je suis désolé.
Come on.
Right at the start of this video clip, you can see the man on the left. He's staring at the policewoman, the first to realize that there's a policewoman. Just behind him is the abductee, whose hands are tied and a cloth is draped over his head. The man on the left realizes that this is a problem, and we see him, his gaze fixed on the policewoman. A fixed gaze indicates that a person is really focused on something, on someone. Given the illegality of what they're doing, it's easy to understand the focus. Immediately afterwards, the person on the right who opens the shed, on the garage door, right side, he opens the garage, and then, all of a sudden, he turns his head to the right. What does this person see? This person sees the policewoman, and the emotion of surprise appears. This person is visible in reduced size. We can see the mouth opening and the eyebrows raising, the configuration of the emotion of surprise. Tom Cruise catches sight of the policewoman, and both his shoulders drop gently. This is the configuration that expresses powerlessness. He feels powerlessness when he sees the policewoman in a totally illegal situation. On this sequence, there's a certain synchronization between the character on the left of the screen and the character on the right. They don't talk to each other, but after seeing the policewoman, they both turn their heads and look each other in the eye as if trying to figure out what to do next. Both people stare at each other to figure out how to act at that moment, in the hope of being able to see something in the other's gaze. Now we see the policewoman in the foreground. She realizes that there's something abnormal about what she sees in front of her. We see her scanning the scene with her eyes, shifting her gaze, scanning from left to right, and moving her head. The rapidly shifting eyes convey fear, mistrust of the situation. This time, the camera zooms in on the character we saw on the left at the start, who was opening the garage, and we see that while he's looking at the policewoman, he's trying to smile, but we can see that it's just a little upward movement of the corners of his lips. Not a real smile. For a real smile, at the very least, the palpebral slits under the eyes have to move upwards, often creating creases at the edges of the eyes. This person is trying to make a smile, but he can't because deep down, he knows that the situation is very unfavorable. In the next shot, the person in the hat also sees the policewoman and begins to breathe deeply, as evidenced by the movements of his torso. From his deep breaths, we can deduce that he's under a lot of stress because of the operation in progress and the sight of the policewoman. What's more, there's an explicit configuration appearing on him, his right eyebrow raised sharply, which appears when a person has an external problem. Given the context, we'd like to think so. Now the person on the left turns and looks at the leader of the operation, Tom Cruise, then he applies strong pressure at the mouth, which translates that he is very tense at this moment. You can try this configuration on yourself, and you'll see that you can't be relaxed. The look he gives Tom Cruise is a bit like the look we saw at the start. It's a look where we connect with each other, and try to get some additional information, so we know what we're doing now. Now the camera returns to Tom Cruise, and Hida has a deep breath. He also feels that he's in a very difficult situation. Given the context, it's easy to understand how he feels. When the policewoman says stop, Tom Cruise calmly moves towards her, turning his head slightly to the left several times, bringing the left side of his face to the fore. These are left rotating plans, a configuration realized when a person wants to create a bond with another person, a positive configuration. At the same time, Tom Cruise also puts his palm forward to distance himself, to set a limit. The left rotating plans show a desire to create a bond, and the palm in front shows that he doesn't want the policewoman to cross a boundary, such as approaching, shooting, or arresting them. Tom Cruise says get in the car, then looks at two people in turn, and these two glances show who he's talking to. The fact that he's meeting their eyes makes them understand that he's talking to them, and then they immediately get in the car. The two people who had been watched by Tom Cruise comply and get into action, heading for the car immediately, but what's striking is that as they do so, they're quite tense and, above all, their heads are lowered in what's known as an inferior sagittal plane. This is what's known as an inferior sagittal plane, which means that when someone feels inferior or in a position of weakness, they tend to lower their head lower than the usual horizontal level, and here we can see that both people have their heads lowered. And in particular, the person on the right of the screen has his head very much lowered. You'll notice that Tom Cruise's palm is raised at the same time, as he'd like the policewoman not to cross certain boundaries, such as coming towards them to arrest them. The person on the right bows her head a lot. She's very embarrassed by the situation. When the camera focuses on his face, you can see that he's extremely tense. The man is putting a lot of pressure on his mouth and eyes. When someone puts so much pressure on these parts of the face, they can't relax. He's very tense, holding back his anger. This person plays his part well, because if you look at him instinctively, you can feel that he's really very uncomfortable. The man on the left, visible this time from the front, doesn't appear to be very tense in terms of his facial expression, but his head is clearly down, in lower sagittal plane. It appears when a person feels inferior or weak. The man holding the hostage is standing at car level. He looks calm and rested. However, observing his gaze, he has ocular saccades that are very rapid, leaving to the left, to the right, to the sides. These configurations show that this man is very suspicious and feels insecure, which is in line with the context. The camera refocuses on Tom Cruise. Here, he slowly advances towards the policewoman, but brings the left side of his face to the fore. This is not a left rotating plan, as he has a very wide range of rotation, i.e. he looks out of the corner of his eye. This configuration expresses distrust. This is understandable, given what's going on. He's afraid the policewoman will shoot him. Then, as he moves forward, he lowers his head, indicating that he's in a position of inferiority. He's doing this because he's even more afraid of the policewoman's reaction at this moment. He'd really like her not to make a mess of things. You'll notice that the person on the left and right of the screen are also watching with an even stronger cornered look. They're also very wary of the situation. Now the policewoman pointing the gun is very tense and afraid of the situation. How can we see her fear? Vertical lines appear on the neck, caused by the contraction of a neck muscle called the platysma. When it's activated, we know the person is feeling fear. This is the muscle group that acts on the lower lip.
Montrez-moi vos mains.
Try lowering your lower lip, and you'll see that you'll activate it. You'll activate these muscles, and they'll appear on your neck. What's more, the policewoman's head is up, in what we call a superior sagittal plane, which indicates superiority. She's imposing herself on the people in front of her. Again, the man on the left looks out of the corner of his eye. As we've already seen, this is a sign of great distrust, and his eyes are also moving rapidly, indicating great distrust. In two different ways, distrust is expressed in his body language. Immediately after the shot, Tom Cruise's eyebrows go up and his mouth opens. He flinches, as do the other people with him. They all flinch. The fact that his eyebrows go up and his mouth opens indicates that we're dealing with an emotion of surprise. He's surprised by the shot that has just been fired and touched the policewoman. He's probably wondering where it came from. Tom Cruise's deep, rapid breathing indicates that he's uncomfortable. Now, the group that has just shot the policewoman is advancing towards Tom Cruise, with the leader of the group as the second person from the right. What's surprising is that this person steps forward and then addresses Tom Cruise with his head lowered. This is the configuration of a lower sagittal plane, realized when one person feels inferior to another. Tom Cruise's deep, frequent breathing shows that he's uncomfortable. You'll find this configuration on several people and on several occasions in this video. Next, the group leader asks one of his members to finish off the policewoman, and as he says this, his upper lip rises, a configuration that conveys great aggression. You can see this lip rising by observing the upper teeth, which will appear as the lip rises. The policewoman is on the ground, injured, and you can see the tension on her forehead. One of the killers approaches, without expressing any particular emotion, preparing to kill the policewoman in cold blood, before being neutralized in his turn. The man with the glasses is startled, takes a step back, his eyebrows go up and his mouth opens, as we've already seen on this video. This is the emotion of surprise. The man stands back, observing the scene out of the corner of his eye. The fact that he's standing back indicates that he's distancing himself from the violent scene, and he's looking out of the corner of his eye because he's suspicious. The injured policewoman is suffering because she's putting her hand to the wound, but unfortunately you can't see any emotion on her face. Her face is completely smooth, and it's true that it's surprising because just before, the forehead was tense, and it conveyed tension. When a person has been shot in the body, he couldn't remain with such a smooth face without expressing emotions of pain and or fear. The lack of emotion on display doesn't match the context. This scene could have been more expressive. When she speaks on the radio, she says, "I've been shot." Her face contracts slightly at this point, her eyebrows lower slightly, and her palms appear a little more. Now, on the right, we can see a man moving his arms and body quite rapidly. This man is impatient to leave. His body starts to move because he'd like to leave, but he stops because he'd like to come and say to Tom Cruise, "Quick, quick, come on. We've got to get out of here, so we don't get caught by the police reinforcements that will be coming after the gunshot and the radio call about the policewoman's injury." Then Tom Cruise will speak up to say, "Come on, let's go." When Tom Cruise tells the policewoman he's sorry, he'll press down on her jaw with force. It's a configuration that appears when he's feeling aggressive, angry, or tense. You can see this configuration on the left side of his jaw. The person in the close-up on the right of the screen is breathing deeply. The upper part of his chest rises and falls with his breathing. This is the breathing of a stressed person in a difficult situation. The last person at the far right about to enter the vehicle puts his hand over his mouth. It's a configuration you see when a person feels a strong sense of discomfort. You've probably already seen it in your daily life, when, for example, a person doesn't let you cross the road and drives in front of you. Often, if the person feels guilty about not having stopped and a sense of shame arises because he finally says to himself, "I should have stopped to let that pedestrian go first," the driver will put his hand over his mouth. We aim to analyze videos from a variety of sources, including interviews, broadcasts, news reports, and other types of video. We've often had questions about acting in films and series. How the body language of actors behaves during filming. We've always answered in the same way. There are actors who take on the scene and the emotions associated with it, experiencing them inside themselves as if they were really living the scene. A person who wants to express anger on their body must first feel angry. A person who wants to express joy must first feel joy. The body is like a matrix onto which thoughts, feelings, and emotions are projected. Non-conscious body language is the observable dimension. This film extract is intense in emotion and suspense, and the acting is varied. When a person's body language matches his or her thoughts, we speak of congruence. When a person's body language is out of phase, we speak of incongruence. After this analysis, you can easily identify the most congruent actors. In any case, it's been a great pleasure to analyze this video, and I'll see you soon for a new body language analysis.